I really like your email handle.
It's a manipulative scheme so that I can convince brands that people like me more than they actually do, so they give me money.
Very smart.
I'm just kidding. I'm being silly.
Virality is not an overnight thing. It's a long, slow road.
100%. And nothing is more obvious than somebody who's miserable about what they're doing when they're making content. You can see it behind their eyes.
They just don't want to be there. You're starting off from scratch. Today is day one. What are you doing?
For me, what's worked always has been just like...
Taha Arshad is a multi-talented Toronto-based creator, actor, and writer.
He uses his platform to inspire others to live meaningful lives through comedy.
I actually did have to start from scratch a few years ago. My TikTok account got banned at like 220,000 followers. So I'm openly gay. I'm Indian and Pakistani. A lot of people had been like reporting my account. The environments that I grew up in were very innately homophobic. A cousin that told me that gay people deserve to be beheaded, which was not a fun thing to hear at the age of like 13.
What about your parents?
I ripped off a lot of band-aids, so if I could have started that at a young age, it would have been much nicer for my brain and my heart.
What's one thing that you want to say to that young version of you that he never received? We find it very interesting that the majority of you who watch and listen to this show aren't yet subscribed to our channels across Spotify, Apple, YouTube. It would mean the world to us if you can do us that small kindness. It allows us to continue to bring on amazing guests week after week and continue to provide you with amazing value and content. It's the only thing we'll ever ask of you. If you can hit that follow or subscribe button, it would mean the world to us. Thank you so much and enjoy the episode. Taha, welcome to the Gents Talk podcast.
Thank you.
I'm really excited to have this conversation with you.
Yeah, likewise.
And I just want to start off by saying I really like your email handle. I'm not gonna call it out here.
Yeah.
But it has this positive spin to it.
Sure.
And every interaction we've had since we first started talking has been around sort of the sense of positivity, and I get this certain vibe and energy from you. For those who may not know who you are, but they maybe see your content online. Who's the guy sitting in front of me right now?
Yeah, so my name is Taha. My handle is Taha Likes You. It's also my email.
Okay. I didn't want
No. I appreciate that it's public knowledge and it matches my handle, so it's easy peasy.
Great.
It's a manipulative scheme for people to think that they're closer to me than they are, so that I can convince brands that people like me more than they actually do, so they give me money. It's all a part of my, evil manipulation tactics that I learned from my ex. So,
Very smart.
I'm just kidding. I'm being silly. My name is Taha. I'm a content creator. I'm also getting into some producing and writing. I'm also an actor, and I live in Toronto. And what else? I am left-handed.
Long walks on the beach, the whole works.
All of that
How
stuff.
long have you been creating content for?
I've been making content since 2021 November, which brings us to about 3.5 years. Which is crazy. But I did have a vlog series on YouTube when I was 11 that no one watched.
Okay.
So in a sense...
Humble beginnings.
Yeah, humble beginnings. In a sense, then, if you do the math, I'm turning 30 this year and I was 11. I've actually really been a content creator for 29 years. But that's not the answer I give people because it's kind of a lie.
It just proves that virality is not an overnight thing. It's a long, slow road.
Sure.
Which it really is, though, because even 3 years is a long time to be doing one thing consistently.
100%.
In the hopes that it actually translates into anything.
100%. And then there's a whole conversation about virality and what it means. Does a positive response from the algorithm mean that your content is more high quality? Not necessarily. It just means it's, doing well with whatever the computer numbers wanted that day, which is a whole other conversation. But yes.
What's fascinating about that is I genuinely believe the content that we produce from this podcast, these incredible conversations that we have, is high quality content. Yeah. But it doesn't go viral because it doesn't have the clickbait feature to it. It doesn't have those quick hooks and the constant moving imagery and all that stuff to it. We've tried to do that with our trailers for the episode because we're like, all right, fine, we'll give in. But it took me a long time to finally understand that it's not, you can create really meaningful content and it won't always resonate. Yeah. And that's not necessarily a reflection of you. It's a reflection of whatever the algorithm is thinking that day.
Yes. I think a big piece of it too is I've had this conversation with friends that don't do the social media stuff is their primary, like, you know, like authors or singers, friends of mine that are like really successful in those fields being like, you know, my manager wants me to make more online content and like I suck at it. And I'm like, it sucks because we kind of live in this day and age where your success as an artist in some ways depends on your success as a marketing manager of yourself. How well you advertise yourself via content and knowing how to use hooks will dictate whether or not your music, for example, does well or your podcast can do well. And like you said, it's not a reflection of the actual quality, it's a reflection of the quality of the marketing. And again, that term quality is subjective. Quality meaning catering to the algorithm, not actual objective quality, which again is a whole other conversation. Quality can't be objective, da 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 da.
Well, it's interesting too because social media, the size of your followers, the type of content you put out, the virality or the number of views on the content you produce and put out has become social currency. Suddenly people who, you know, okay, I'm going to try to put this very gently. There are incredible artists out there in all walks of life who are so talented. But like you said, they don't know the social media game. And that's okay to some degree, unfortunately. And on the flip side, you've got people who are going viral and building followers who've got very surface level personalities, we'll call it. And you could see the ego inflation. You could see the way they carry themselves changes. And I see it all the time. Whenever I go to events, whenever I hang out with people who suddenly start to see a little bit of fame here and there, it's almost like they become a different person. And it actually helps me understand a little more why the OG celebrities talk about how fame is not what you think it is. And it's actually very, very difficult to manage. Do you find as your accounts continue to grow and people have this perception of who you are that it's almost kind of splitting the personality a little bit?
Perhaps a bit. I think I always tell people one of the things that I'm really lucky to have had in my life is to have this stuff take off in my like mid to late 20s. I think if it took off earlier while I was still developing, not to say we're not always developing, but you know, those are pretty key phases, your early 20s. I think it would have been harder to manage things like that. I always joke with my friends and stuff because like it's really sweet. Like people will like stop me and like take pictures or get really excited to see me, and it's like the sweetest thing ever. But the running joke I have is that like I can physically never have a big ego about this stuff because my friends and family keep me humble. I don't surround myself with yes men. My friends are my friends not because, you know, and they do support me unconditionally, but I'm not friends with them because they agree with everything I say. I'm friends with them because they're sweet, awesome people, and they will drag me to filth, and likewise. And there's no like worry about that being inappropriate. We're just like very real with each other, and same with my family. I think like similar vein to yours, I've met a lot of people who have let that kind of social media clout or whatever go to their head because they have some degree of fame. And this may be a bit too harsh to say, but I think people who let social media validation become the primary source of their ego and let it actually change their personalities have thin social lives when it comes to meaningful connections. Because if something as shallow as that is able to twist and dictate your actual character, then I think you need to have a more sturdy root. Your community and your people need to be stronger because that's actually a very small thing. It's there, but it's small. And you should be with people that kind of keep you grounded and validate you based on your character, you know, versus like how well you're doing online.
Interesting thing to say because as more and more people become viral these days at younger and younger ages, their entire personalities are tied to their online personas.
Yes.
And that could be a very scary thing because if for whatever reason something happens, an app shuts down or the videos stop performing, your personality is tied to that. And as those start to fail, you feel like a failure.
Yes.
How do you combat that? And the reason I'm asking you now is because of the manner in which you're speaking and the fact that you told me before we started recording that you've also studied psychology.
Yes.
Okay. So I want to preface that there's thought behind this.
Yes. There is. Because I'm South Asian, my parents didn't let me pursue entertainment, which, you know what? I'm very happy they didn't. I really loved my, I guess now brief, it was like 5+ years career in like psychology and neuroscience and research. But yes, we were talking about psychology. How do I combat that? I will say that something I'm very grateful for is because it doesn't dictate my being so much on a day-to-day basis. If a video flops, it's really not the end of the world for me. In fact, I have a lot of videos that flop. Some of my favorite videos I've ever made are huge flops. I've seen the way it makes a lot of my peers really stressed out. Funny enough, my younger peers, and I'm like, guys, you can't let this get to you that much. Like, who freaking cares? Am I allowed to swear?
You are, yeah.
Okay, who fucking cares? Like, okay. I literally made a joke on one of my recent videos that I really liked. Absolutely flopped to shit. I commented saying that, I was like, whoever is reading this, in a way, you're on this video getting a very specific limited edition curated experience because nobody else is watching this video. So that's my reframing of it. But yeah, things flop. Who cares? If you stop doing things that are fun because they aren't doing well, then you won't get to play and experiment. And like, yes, the result is higher output of higher quality, or not higher quality, higher virality videos. But then it's like, if you're not having fun, you're going to be miserable. And nothing is more obvious than somebody who's miserable about what they're doing when they're making content. You can see it behind their eyes.
They just don't want to be there.
Oh yeah, you can see it in the like Shoppers Drug Mart ad where they're like, I got 60 optimum points. Buy Bounty paper towels for this Ramadan season. You know? And I'm like, are you alive?
Well, you know, it's funny you talk about ads because it's like every time I open up a platform now, it's all I'm inundated with. Between actual, very obvious brand-made ads and then influencer-sponsored ads.
Yeah.
And I skip them.
Yeah.
I don't watch them.
Yeah.
And I think the majority of people, and maybe I shouldn't be saying this, but the majority of people probably aren't really watching them as well.
Yeah.
The ones that I've seen have performed well are the ones where the creator, again, who's like extremely artistic and creative, integrates that into something that they already always do.
Yes.
And it doesn't feel forced. It feels normal. And you're like, oh, this is actually humorous. I know what you're doing, but I can keep watching this.
Yeah.
Versus the example you just gave of like, hey, this holiday season, I am drinking this. And then next week, it's like, this holiday season, I'm also drinking this. And you're like, well, how much of that are you drinking? Really?
Exactly. 100%. And it's so funny because a big piece of that isn't even the creator, it's the brands. A lot of brands will specifically tell you that they don't want things a specific way or want them a specific way. And you can push back, but ultimately sometimes they're kind of run by a lot of really stubborn boomers without a real marketing department. And so you're like, well, I guess I'll make this video, ? And it's not as engaging and it could do well, but you want me to like sit there and look in the camera and be like, make sure you buy this galvanized steel beam. It will support your house and make sure that your levels never fall. If you care about structural support, buy blah, 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 versus like something sillier. There's obviously a balance.
Yeah.
I submitted an ad. I gave a brand 2 options. One of them involved me making out with my hand. They said no to that one. Which, that one I was like, okay, I get it. That's weird. It's also a mouthwash ad, so like, I don't know. Maybe it's more PG.
That sounds funnier. What was the alternative?
The alternative was still good.
Okay.
I was talking to my hand.
I see.
Okay. Without making out.
All right, without the makeout.
Yeah.
Can you post the blooper after that? No, they wouldn't let you.
Not, no.
What's the rest? So whether you're a business owner, whether you're in a career job and you want to start creating content online, whether you just have a creative outlet and you want to get it out there, what's the recipe here to actually growing on social media? Because I mentioned it earlier, it has become a social currency. And your ability to open certain doors and get access to certain events and opportunities is now very much gate-kept by the size of your follower and your network. You're starting off from scratch. You don't have any accounts. Today is day 1. What are you doing? And this is not at all where I thought this conversation was going to go, but we're going with it.
We're going with it. And it's so funny. I have a segue, but I think if you're starting from scratch, this is so corny, and some people might think it's bullshit, but like for me, what's worked always has been just like making stuff that I genuinely to my bones feel is funny and entertaining, and just like going with your gut in terms of like, I want to have fun and like do something funny. Again, this is specific to me because I'm a comedy content creator mainly. That combined with, okay, how can I make it a little bit more like hooky? So I have ADHD, despite the fact that I'm medicated. I think I need to increase my dose, but maybe I won't because it helps me edit my videos because I'm like, oh, like this is boring. I can't pay attention. So like I make it more interesting and then more interesting. And then, it helps with like the kind of hook aspect of it. So I'd say like have a fun hook. And make stuff that actually feels fun for you because the motivation is what's going to keep you consistently posting. And so many people consistently post for years before anything takes off.
Yeah.
So if you want to be consistently posting, you have to like what you're doing. Now, I actually did have to start from scratch a few years ago.
Okay.
My TikTok account got banned at like 220,000 followers or 230,000 followers. So I'm openly gay. I'm Indian and Pakistani. My family is Muslim. And so a lot of people had been like reporting my account, leaving shitty comments. Anytime I tried to even like humorously retaliate, I guess the algorithm picked up on that being like combative. So it was a mixture of all of those things. And I had to start from scratch. Unfortunately, TikTok was unable to, well, not unable, they didn't help. They're like notoriously bad at helping their creators. And so that was a really interesting
So
thing.
unfortunate.
It is, yeah. It is.
And imagine if your entire personality was tied to that social media account.
Sure. Yeah, I was about 8 months into doing it, and it sucked because I was like, I'm starting from zero, and I didn't have an Instagram account at the time.
Right.
And so I did start from scratch, and that's what I did, and then I built it back up, which is nice, but, it sucks that, like, people's prejudices against your identity can lead to such significant implications for your career and work. And even though it was unfair because I was being unjustly reported, it happened. And I think a big learning lesson for myself, or like a big takeaway from that experience, was I kept being like, this is so unfair. No one's helping me. I'm not getting it back. Like, I'm not getting my account back. And then the more time that went by, I was like, okay, life is just not fair. And you have to make do with what you have. Which, again, is so cliche, but I think it's one of those things that, like, once you actually live it, it helps you kind of make your peace with it. And I know we briefly talked about this before, but like the whole identity thing with culture, with sexuality, with religion or lack thereof, I'm sure all of us at some point in our life have felt some sort of injustice, I think, because of who we are, whatever that means. And life is not fair. It will not side with you at every turn.
And that's such a powerful piece there, because if you think back to any of your biggest failures in life, you could probably pinpoint something and say, hey, this part was not fair. But fairness has nothing to do with it by the end of it. It's just, it happened. And it's like, what do you do with that? Do you let that simmer and sit with you? And I think a lot of men in particular struggle because they let it sit and simmer.
Yes.
And then it just constantly compounds, and then they're just adding more as life throws more unfair curveballs at you, and until one day you explode. There's just nothing left.
Yeah.
The being openly gay, coming from an Indian and Pakistani household, a Muslim background. Talk to me about the identity, the clash of identities.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, culturally and religiously, the environments that I grew up in were very innately homophobic. I have very specific memories of different family members telling me that it's super fucked up that gay people exist. I had a cousin that told me that, like, gay people deserve to be beheaded, which was not a fun thing to hear at the age of, like, 13.
Is that when you already knew?
I semi-knew, semi-repressed it.
Okay.
Yeah. You grow up internalizing all of these things, and then whether it's like a sudden realization or a slow burn, either situation, you're internalizing that you are wrong, that you are a mistake, that you are a test. Your life is actually just a test from God. You're not allowed to love anyone. This is just a test. Some people have different tests. Yours is that you're never allowed to love anyone. And that's just what the scriptures say, and that's what I have to make my peace with, at least the interpretation that I grew up with. Again, I know that's a point of contention for a lot of people.
And I'm glad you say that, because I've had a number of conversations with people who have said that it's not so strict. But again, it's a point of interpretation.
It's such
like
a point
all
of
religions
interpretation,
are.
100%.
Yeah.
Especially, and without going too much into religion, like, I'm an atheist, but like, I know that Islam is like, there are lots of interpretations. There are also a lot of specific things that we kind of take as like, oh, this is like specifically an Islamic value, but it's not actually in the Quran. It's what like imams have said or like religious figures have interpreted and kind of spread gospel about. And so that's a whole other conversation. But, you know, I'm big on making sure people feel like they have the freedom to believe in what they want to believe in, even if I don't, right? So I love that you shared that, you know, you have experiences of people saying, no, it's not actually that strict, because chances are they're probably more right about that in terms of how it represents that holy book than the people that I was raised with, that I love dearly. And I want to make room for that nuance and discomfort.
Because that's also important.
That's also important.
That you can love the person or the thing that makes you feel bad. It's complicated. It's complicated. So complicated.
To a certain extent, yes. But yes, going back to your question, yeah, internalizing all of those really, really painful things growing up really reshaped and reprogrammed my brain. For me, it manifested into hyper independence. Because every interaction was, okay, family member, family friend, oh, they're really nice to me. Okay, once they find out when I'm older, if they find out they're going to hate me, don't internalize the love they're showing me, because it doesn't matter. It is inconsequential. No one's going to be there for you. You might get kicked out of your home because of the things you've heard growing up. Be independent. Figure out how to be financially independent. Figure out how to get your own home ASAP. Be super, super good in your academics, so you can have a strong career, so that it can compensate for the fact that you're gay, because that's something that needs to be compensated for, right? It's like tipping the scales. Yeah. It's not good, obviously, but it's why so many, so why so many queer men particularly tend to be like pretty career driven. I feel like we're compensating.
Interesting. I've never heard it framed that way, but it makes sense.
Yeah. So
I have a lot of queer friends who are very career driven, like very intensely.
Yeah. There is a compensation factor, because now when there's like an auntie or an uncle from my community who talks shit about me being gay, I can be like, I got better grades than your kid in school. Before I was making TikToks for a living, I had a really, really great clinical research job at a hospital. Your son sells drugs. Like, you know what I mean? I'm like, you can talk shit all you want about my nose ring, but you suck at parenting. And even though there's no objective measure of worth, and I try to fight the idea that there is one, if there was one, I'd be winning based on your values. It's evil, but I like it.
So, okay, you're 13 years old. At that point, you kind of knew, but kind of repressed it. At what point did you fully accept that this was who you are?
About 18 actually. Okay. Probably around the age of 18.
And for context, for people who are listening, watching, a reminder that for men in particular, our frontal
lobes
don't develop until
25.
Roughly, so like there's already a lot happening there, and we've not fully mature yet.
Totally. I was about 18 when I guess I like fully accepted it. I think by that point I'd also made my peace about like what my personal religious beliefs were as well. I was unsure about how I'd navigate my life moving forward, but I knew that this was a part of me and it was real. And as much as I tried convincing myself otherwise, it couldn't change. I became really religious when I was a teenager for a little bit too. I'd pray constantly for it to go away, and then it didn't. And that also contributed to me losing some faith in religion, at least my interpretation of it that I was fed growing up too.
Do you think if not just Islam, but religion in general, if religion was more openly accommodating or just didn't make it a thing, let's say, that perhaps you would not be sitting in front of me an atheist today?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I probably would have continued. Because I think a big source of religion for a lot of people is community.
Yep.
And as humans, we love community. We need community. In North America, we live in such an individualistic society. And we need it here for so many reasons, right? But so much of our culture is so individualistic. And so we crave that community and groupness. It's why people love churches. They love mosques. It's why, like, even though I'm an atheist, when it's like Ramadan, I love being able to like go home and fast with my family in solidarity and like eat together, you know, and then like, or like go to like an iftar with like a lot of people and like enjoy that we're celebrating this thing together. You know, the community aspect is amazing. And yeah, perhaps I would have been able to explore more about the religion and faith instead of aggressively turning away from it because of the insanely induced religious trauma. I think that would be something.
Who was the first person you told?
That's a good question. I'm gonna drink some water. The first person I told was it was a friend of mine named Alicia. She's really great. I haven't talked to her in a long time, but she was really great. She was also an openly queer South Asian person. She's a woman. I remember it was 2016. I was 21 and I was like, Alicia, I really need to talk to you. And she's like, yeah, cool. And like we were in her car. She was driving. I can't drive because I'm gay. And we were going to this place in Hamilton that had a really nice view. And the drive was just taking a while and we were at like a stoplight and she's like, is everything okay? Like, what do you need to talk to me about? I was like, nothing. Can we just like talk when we're there? And I was like freaking out. And we were just at the stop, like the red light. And she just looks at me and she's like, are you going to tell me you're gay? And I was like, yes. And she's like, okay, I already knew that. Your body language is completely different around men. And I was like, oh my God, that's crazy. I can't believe it was that obvious. I'm so happy that you said that. And we had like the best chat. We talked for hours and hours.
How good did it feel to finally let it out?
God, it was like, okay, imagine like you have really bad stomach cramps for like 21 years. And then you let out this huge fart and you're just like, oh my God, not only do I feel relief in my digestive system, but I'm also really skinny now. Cause like, you know, when you bloat, it's like you get this like big pot belly and it's like, like a balloon. It was like that. It was incredible. I was just talking to her about all these dreams I had about love and what it could mean for me, that I'd never externalized, that were always locked away. Like all these things growing up where I'm like, no, I'm never going to be allowed to love. I will never be allowed to have this, or this. Marriage is not in the cards for me. I talked to Alicia that night about everything. I told her about all the dreams I have, about loving someone one day, maybe getting married, what it would be like to date someone. Oh, it was such a beautiful night. She was so great. And her and I just had the best chat. And it was like magic. I love so deeply, romantically, platonically, everything, you know? And so it was like I was finally able to like unlock that part of myself, because I think loving is what makes us human. Again, all forms of love, not just romantic, but like every form of love. But even when you try to inhibit someone's romantic inclinations, they will inhibit the other parts of their love almost like as a byproduct of that. They're all connected. So I felt like my heart was kind of like free.
Does she know how that made you feel?
Yeah.
You told her that one conversation.
Yeah, she could see it that day, and I've talked to her since then, and I like to remind her. I haven't talked to her in years, but she's great. And I remember her being like, I like that I was the first person you came out to. She was like, this is great. I feel great. And I was
Which is such a powerful moment for someone.
Totally.
The conversations I've had on this podcast and just with friends about the story where they came out in a formal way, let's say. Some have been way more traumatic than it needed to be. Some were forced, like, or called out, and it kind of put them on the spot before they were ready, which again, it's like I just equate it to being put on spotlight on you. You have to sort of open your mouth and nothing's coming out. What about your parents? How was that?
That was a bit trickier. I love my family deeply, and I think people see a very final product version of my family online. They see a version of them that I didn't get in a lot of ways growing up, despite their best intentions, or even a version of them that I didn't get when I came out to them initially. I came out to my family when it was 2019 May. I was 23 turning 24. I ripped off a lot of Band-Aids. So I took my mom to a Panera Bread. I sat us next to this giant window. So the Panera Bread in Heartland in Mississauga has a really big window. I sat there. My mom is not a violent person ever, but I was like, just in case this like makes her realize she's violent, I'll have witnesses. And so I sat her there and I was like, hey, and she was like, hey, and I was like, okay. And then I was like, so like, I'm an atheist, I'm gay, and also the man I've been living with isn't my roommate, he's my boyfriend. And she was just... That is
a lot of Band-Aids.
It was a lot of Band-Aids. I just couldn't lie anymore. I was so tired. It was so much lying, and I just couldn't do it anymore. And I don't like lying. even if I like can be decently good at it with my family. Yeah, she was very frozen. She was very shocked, which I'm like, why were you shocked at a High School Musical 2-themed birthday party when I was 12? You need to work on your gaydar. That's crazy.
Denial.
Absolutely denial.
Yeah.
I'm being facetious, but obviously, definitely denial.
Yeah.
You know, it's easy to live in your own world when you want it to be a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
Which sounds like a motivational quote, but don't use it as that. That's
Not in this particular
It's a
context,
horrible
yeah.
way to live your life. Yeah, she was very shocked. One of the first things she said was, "What am I gonna do? What am I gonna do with all the jewelry I saved for your wife?" And I was like, honestly, so real. I was like, well, I'm not gonna wear it, but like I can probably sell it. I didn't actually make that joke, but her brain was just kind of panicking, right? And she
It
was
almost sounds like she was processing. How do I explain this? It's like she was processing problems to solve without actually processing the thing you said.
oh, true, yeah, kind of externalizing it by
like,
making
oh, well,
it
what
about
about
that.
the jewelry? And it's just like, maybe it's not as big a deal if I focus on these other little problems.
Yeah, that's true. It's a good point. Probably, yeah, a way to externalize that pain, right?
Yeah.
Make it task focused. It took her some time after that, not too long, but like a little bit of time. And I'm grateful. I'm very lucky, I have to say. My mom is very loving and worked really hard to become a lot more accepting, which I'm very grateful for. I think one piece of it that shook me was how hurt she was and how she basically told me, she was like, it's like I'm finding out after 23 years that my son's been keeping this huge secret and I didn't actually know him. And now that I have nephews and nieces, I'm like, if I found out my child that I poured my whole life into and raised as a single parent the way my mom did actually has this whole other life and was coming to me telling me this stuff and being like, hey, like, I live separately and I'm financially independent because I feel like you might kick me out after today, that would shake me to my core. That's my child. I don't know them. That's scary. And it kind of probably makes you feel like you did something wrong as a parent, which, yes, she did. A lot of it's culturally induced, but I'm not trying to go to my grave holding it against her. I want to move forward with my family, and we have.
I think there needs to be a little bit of empathy in general for our parents. I say this a lot on this podcast, I find. They're going through life for the first time, just like we are. And in your mom's case, she grew up for decades in a certain cultural environment surrounded by a certain type of thought and ideology and a manner of speaking and behaving and do and don't. And for you to say to her, hey, everything that you may have been told is no good, I am. And that's got to be like shell shocking in so many different ways.
Yeah.
And I think one thing that I'm appreciating about your story here is you gave her the space to actually learn to like grow from it, as opposed to like, hey, why didn't you instantly react the way I needed you to? It's giving her the grace and space to just go, this is a lot.
Yeah.
I need to process this because there's some things here that are going to clash with the way I've lived my life for so long, and I need to balance how I'm going to show up in my own life for me, but also for my son. And I think it's powerful that you did that, and I think that maybe that's a lesson in there for others when they have those conversations about anything for that matter with their parents.
Sure. Of course, there's nuance everywhere, so obviously taking that with a grain of salt, because I guess everyone's familiar circumstances are different. I don't know, like, the degree of abuse people will encounter in their homes too. And like, yeah, I think I agree super hard on that. And I'm a big advocate for that, but also while making room for the nuance and acceptance that sometimes that's not the reality for a lot of people,
Sure, yeah.
which I think goes without saying, but because I'm so used to online culture, I have to be like, no, just so you know, I have thought about all these other things and I know I'm not saying that.
That's the jewelry example.
What do you mean?
The fact every time you add in a little nuance to something, like you thought about all these different things, it's the jewelry example that your mom gave you.
Where she was like, I'm thinking
about
this
all
thing.
these little other things.
Oh, true. Yeah. Interesting. Huh. I guess it is. That's cool.
You mentioned single mom.
Yes.
Where's your dad?
My dad, he lives with us now. It's a very complicated situation. My parents separated when I was very young. It's a very complicated familial thing, but I have a lot of love for both of them. I've just spent most of my life with my mom. And my dad has tried and made efforts, of course, and I love him. We just don't have the same relationship. My mom did single-handedly, in a lot of ways, raise her kids, particularly me, because of how much younger I am than my siblings. They got way more time with my dad growing up. Whereas I'm...
How many siblings?
2 siblings, brother and sister, 8 and 9 years older, significantly older. Yeah, so if you guys are listening to this, you're old. Sorry, I don't know what's happened. Yeah, just proportionally, I've spent less time with him. And
how has the absence of a male role model affected you?
It sucked.
I've been asking that question a lot more recently.
Yeah.
Because I'm realizing more and more, I know in the day and age that we live in, where we go, you know, like the one parent can play the role of both, and sure, they could, but do they need to?
Yeah.
Right? And I genuinely believe that for boys in particular and young men, the presence of a positive male role model, and it doesn't just have to be a dad, it could be a teacher, it could be a coach, but someone like that plays a profound impact on how we grow up as young men.
Yeah.
I don't know if you agree or disagree with that, but I'd love to hear your thoughts.
No, I completely agree. Any male role model is good. It sucked having not had one or a consistent one. It was really sad.
You ever had that conversation with him?
It's not helpful.
For you?
For either of us.
Okay.
He was not present as a result of circumstances that were out of both of our controls.
Okay.
He called every day almost for years, and like up until the day that he ended up retiring and moving back. He tried to be there, and it was sweet. It was just not the same. I never felt that closeness with him because he wasn't physically there in my prime years. It sucked growing up without a male role model. I would like imprint on all of these random older male figures and like make them my surrogate fathers, like school teachers, mainly school teachers actually. And it wasn't until I grew up and looked back that I was like, oh my God, that's what that was. That's why I was so freaking obsessed with my like 5th grade older male teacher who was like a father in my brain to me in a weird indirect way. It you latch on to whatever's there because it's not present for you. I remember feeling kind of sad on my grade at graduation because I had to like go on YouTube and learn how to tie a tie, and I was like, oh man, like people's dads teach them this, but I have to use YouTube, which is such a like woe is me thing, but also it was sad. And
still sad, doesn't matter.
Yeah. It really sucked.
How do you reconcile all of that missed time in your relationship today with your father, with your brother, with friends and their parents? Like that, there's a lot there that you can share with other people.
Yeah, I try my best. I mean, a big part of my platform and why I wanted it once it started growing was like, I want to be able to like be that for people. Maybe like queer guys who are in the closet, or even if they're not queer at all, just being able to be a positive male role model.
Yep.
You know, that's how I reconcile it, by trying to be that, and also by thinking forward and leading with love and a rational mindset when dealing with my family. My relationship with my brother now is awesome. He's awesome. Growing up, he was like a typical like mean teenage brother that was like, you're stupid, stop, blah, 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 calling me like homophobic slurs. He's apologized for that. He's really lovely now. We're tight. My dad, I work every day on making our relationship something, and it's really great because he and I have gotten so much closer in my mid to late 20s, because I'm like, okay, on the dad part, you weren't able to be there in a lot of ways. In some ways, it was due to circumstance. In some ways, it was you. But you put in a lot of effort.
Which is the important part.
It is the important part. And I really want to highlight that. Like, yes, impact and what actually happened are important to think about. But it is not lost on me that he called me so regularly as a kid. And even sometimes I get annoyed. I'd be like, I don't really like know him that well. In my brain, why is he calling? But I'm like, no, you cared. You tried your best. If I couldn't have you as my dad, I will have you as an older kind of parent figure that's not really a parent, but an older person that lives with us, and I will get to know you and connect with you there. Because he has memories of, like, so many memories with me as a kid that, like, I don't remember because I was too young, you know? And he did visit sometimes growing up, which is really nice and special. And I've spent so much time rehabilitating our relationship. And I will continue to do so because it's nice. I'm like, you're a person and I'm getting to know you, and it's okay. As long as you're not a jackass or an asshole or a piece of shit, then, like, I want to get to know you. And he's not any of those things. He's had a really, really, really difficult life. This man is in his, like, mid-70s, grew up in, like, a lower class Pakistani family in Karachi, Pakistan. Like, the cards were stacked against him for his life. And so I can only approach him with empathy and love. And he's fun to talk to sometimes. He and I have some things in common, which is fun.
Well, it's also an important reminder that his toolbox is probably a little more limited than yours is because of the life that he grew up in.
Totally.
And the time that he grew up in, and
totally
the deck being stacked against him. And so it sounds like he did literally, he opened up his toolbox and took every tool out to try to do something with it. And it's not his fault that there just weren't high-tech new tools in there.
Yeah.
And I had to reframe that thinking for my father, because I'm like, why? My father showed me love and care and kindness, but there were limitations in so many other ways that I sought in other male role models, like my cousin's dad, who was like this wise older man who would, like, sit me down and, like, listen, if you're gonna do this, then you should consider A, B, and C. And it's just like, whoa. And then I'm like, man, I can't get that from my dad.
Yeah.
And then it took me all these years later to just realize, like, it's not that he didn't want to. He just didn't know how. And when I really think about it and reflect on it, there were times where he would tell me, he's like, honestly, I don't even know how to answer this. You should ask so-and-so. And that was his way of saying, I still care and I want you to get the right piece of advice. I just can't give it to you. And that part is important because I think, again, it's another reminder that we're all just doing the best we can with the tools that we have. And a little bit of grace and empathy is always needed.
Yeah.
I want to ask you about the social media thing tied to your family. Because it's one thing for you to come out to your family and have sort of those hurdles and roadblocks. It's another for you to then go, oh, and by the way, I'm going to put this all online for the world to see. Like, it's not just I'm going to be gay and open about it and all these things, but I'm not going to really tell people unless they meet me. It's, hey, world, here I am. And you're succeeding at doing that. How do you balance that sort of tug of war?
Yeah, it doesn't feel like a tug of war anymore. Maybe initially.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm lucky. Again, this is an example of my mom being a very understanding person. And even my dad, I've talked to him about this stuff where I'm like, hey, like, I do talk about this stuff in my content. I know it sucks, but when something becomes part of your personal narrative, nobody else gets to control what happens with that. Like, if I'm affected by this thing, I'm allowed to talk about it, even if you don't want me to. It's a part of my story as much as it is yours, right? That's my logic behind it. I've never even really had to justify it. My parents are really understanding. It's pretty amazing. Like, even with my mom, like, I'm like, you know, is it okay that I talk about, like, you raising us in a lot of ways as a single parent? And she's like, yeah, that's okay, because that's what happened. So it is what it is. And I'm like, okay, sick. Like, that's awesome. So I'm very lucky on that regard.
Yeah.
And my kind of, again, my rationale behind it being that, like, nobody gets to dictate how I respond to the narrative that was thrust upon me. Or like nobody gets to dictate how I react to the circumstances that were kind of thrust upon me, right? So
what advice would you give to young men out there listening, watching this? Maybe they follow your account, maybe they're stumbling upon you for the first time and they're hearing this and it's resonating with them.
Yeah.
And they don't quite know how to have that difficult conversation.
Yeah.
And they just need some guidance. What would you say to them?
That's a good question. I would say, whatever you do, lead with love. A lot of things you read or see online, particularly in today's kind of dangerous minefield of like red pill movements we're seeing in terms of like men's media and a lot of weird indoctrination stuff. No matter what any of those people whose content you might have ever engaged with say about leading with love, it being feminine or like bad or, you know, that like weird incel culture stuff, whatever it is, lead with love. It is not feminine to lead with love. We are humans and we are made to love. That is our whole design. That is what we are. It is what fuels us. It is what drives us. If you lead with love, it can only take you to the right places and it can only connect you to the right role models and the right people. If you make that your code, you will see how the world can start working for you.
I want to tap into your psychology training a second here. The manosphere, incels, the red pill movement, all of those things. Why is that resonating with young men so much today? What's happening there?
Yeah, I think it's the lack of community we have. I think within those spheres, you see community, right? You see a very we versus them mentality, which makes you think, okay, yeah, these are my people. I feel supported. The feeling of support you're feeling isn't necessarily an alignment in value or an inherent truth to their words. It's the feeling of community.
Belonging.
And it's like you said, a lot of men, most men, maybe all men, we're trained to be like pressure cookers. And one day we will explode if we don't let the pressure out and learn how to live and exist without being pressure cookers. It's not our fault we're raised to be pressure cookers. The only reason I didn't grow up being a pressure cooker is because I separated myself from my family's values when I realized I was gay. I would be a pressure cooker if I didn't. Your pressure cooker instinct will be to dive into these manospheres, whatever you want to call it.
And also understanding that masculinity is not inherently bad.
No.
And I think that's, conversations I've had with young men who, I do a lot of talks at high schools.
Yeah.
And I've had conversations with young men who've said, it feels like being me, a man today, is a bad thing. And so I feel this need to defend it. And I was like, this is really wise for a 14-year-old to be talking like this. But I think it speaks volumes to where these young men are feeling like, hey, just the very fact that I exist as a man and I have ambition and I want to grow and I want to build muscles and I want to date beautiful people and I want to make lots of money. It's like, what exactly is wrong with that? And why do I feel I need to defend myself? And it's this reminder that there isn't necessarily something wrong with wanting to get in physical shape, wanting to make money and live a successful life. It's, to your point, it's how you lead your life.
Totally. Right? Because when you lead, again, it's the whole leading with love thing. That'll shape your values surrounding these goals. And it sucks that younger people feel like masculinity is inherently bad. It's not. It's the redefining of masculinity that a lot of society and culture has done. That fake masculinity we see, that's violent, that's misogynistic, that's homophobic, that's just like the umbrella term just being is shitty, that's not real masculinity.
Nope.
That's insecurity.
Yeah.
Real masculinity is like, just think of like a male role model you really admire, who you're like, I love this guy, he's awesome. And like just really lovely and loving, that's masculinity. Yeah. Also, go to the gym. It's really good for your mental health. And also, like, it'll make your arms big. So both are good.
Yeah. Again, there's nothing wrong with having ambition and wanting to strive for success and marry someone that you love and are attracted to and make as much money as you possibly. Great.
Yeah.
All the power to you.
100%.
How you treat other people, though, is where your masculinity really comes through. We had J.P. Sachs, a musician, on who talked so eloquently about how his definition of masculinity is, can you protect the people around you, but not necessarily physically? Can you make them feel safe just by being in their presence? Or vice versa?
Yeah.
Right? Like, do you feel safe having this conversation with me? Then I'm emitting a positive form of masculinity because I'm making you feel safe to have this vulnerable and important conversation versus me sitting here making you feel like I'm judging you for everything that you've said and done. Would be very different.
Totally.
And I think that's the important distinction between the two. And you're right, it's getting lost today. And the algorithms are driving traffic, and you almost can't blame the algorithms, right? Like I want to so badly.
Yeah.
But these male performative personalities are spewing a certain type of content that generates clicks and views because they're triggering fear and anger and they're triggering emotions in people that's driving them to. So not only are these young men finding themselves on these pages and then seeing, to your point, communities of other young men voicing the things that maybe they're already thinking, like, oh yeah, okay, it is okay for me to want to go to the gym and get big. What's wrong with that?
Yeah.
And then on the flip side, there will be people like you and me who are going to these things to see what young men are saying, but the very fact that we're showing up is driving the algorithm further and further. And so they go viral. But the ones creating content to say, hey, here's a healthy version of masculinity is not going to drive that kind of content or virality. And in conversations that I have, I know I'm going on a tangent here, but in conversations I have with mental health organizations struggling to understand how to flip the narrative and have these conversations, their biggest struggle is that they don't exist on the battlegrounds that these young men are playing on, which is online.
Exactly.
And if they're not online having these conversations on the same platforms that they are, you're talking into a void, right? No one, respectfully speaking, these young men are not opening up books to read on what healthy masculinity is. They're spending most of their hours online on social media. And if that's where they're at, that's where these conversations need to be had.
Totally.
I want to thank you for humoring me.
No.
I want to ask you one more thing here. I want you to humor me one more time, actually. I want you to envision 13-year-old you. Okay. You walk into your bedroom. There's 13-year-old you sitting on your bed. Feet dangling, going through all the emotions that you were going through at 13 years old. What's one piece of advice or one thing that you want to say to that young version of you that he never received?
It's a lovely question. I'll take a few seconds to gather my thoughts on that. Keep being yourself. Everyone keeps telling you to stop being yourself. Everything is telling you that you need to be different. Keep being yourself. If I kept being myself at 13, in small ways, I think I'd be a bit less constricted of a human as an adult. And I'm working on untangling that, as we all are every day. But if I could have started that at a young age, it would have been much nicer for my brain and my heart. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with you. I'd also say that. Well, in terms of your sexuality, you're a little crazy, but that's why there's medication. I'm kidding. That's a joke. Well, anyways, that's neither here nor there. I would say keep being yourself, and there's nothing wrong with you. Yeah.
So then I will say to you, keep being yourself, and that there's nothing wrong with you.
Thank you, Samir. That's very good. That's very nice.
And I really appreciate the work that you do. I like when I meet creators who spread positive messaging, because I meet a lot of creators who are very internal facing. And I think the world needs more people like you.
That's really nice.
So thank you for spending your time, your afternoon with me here. Thank you for sharing your story. I sincerely hope there's someone out there who hears this, watches this, and maybe it gives them just a little more courage in their life to talk about the thing that matters to them, whether that's their sexuality, their career choice, their relationship, whatever it may be.
Whatever it is, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Pleasure.
Thank you so much, everybody.